Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me as we take a look at your updated forecast for Tropical Storm Debby and its potential, mostly flooding concerns around us. Updates, not a ton changed, but we are still definitely kind of in the outer range of where I would still be a little concerned, but my concern level is not real high. But I still think preparations should be being made for, we are going to get a lot of rain. So here is the situation today. Debby has moved back inland and is starting to move north. And you can start to see what's going to happen as Debby moves north, and we'll see this on radar, is you've got this front boundary layer here. You've got nice dry air that has briefly made its way into southern Vermont, and Debby running into that, and also the system to the west, which is going to eventually kind of capture Debby and move Debby out to sea. That's good. It's going to keep Debby moving relatively quickly when Debby gets to us. But it's also squeezing moisture out of the atmosphere here. And so what that means is it's really enhancing the rain, especially to the north, but also to the east. And so it's not so much as Debby comes through, it'll be moving quick enough that the actual core of the system will drop some very heavy rain when it moves through. It's going to move probably to our north and west, but essentially it's going to move through close enough to us that we'll see some of that core rain, and it will rain very hard. But it's only going to be an hour or two that happens. The real question is, do we get rain beforehand, which is sort of caused by the interaction between Debby, this front, and also this leftover boundary layer, which is kind of, you can see even in the clouds, it's starting to diminish, but is still sort of there. And so that really is the question mark for where that heavy rain is, and still that most likely interaction with Debby and the front, and the terms of where the heaviest axis of rain is going to be, is to the north of where Debby is right now. Debby definitely moved quite a ways north and is eventually going to take a curved path, but it's going to be a little bit north of us, and that kind of leaves us on the side of the storm that doesn't get quite as much rain. It's really north, and then the St. Lawrence River Valley, I would be concerned. If you're in northern Vermont, I think they're more likely to see issues than we are here. Certainly upstate New York, the Adirondacks, I would say, and western Pennsylvania into central New York as well. Those are kind of the highest risk areas. We are still in a risk because what you can get is always, you can get some training storms. You can get kind of a line of really enhanced convective activity that goes on for a couple hours. And if you get, or even for an hour, if you get three inches of rain in an hour, 3.5 inches of rain in an hour, or over a 2-hour period, you get three inches of rain even. That can cause some minor issues. I think that's more likely what we're going to see. I don't think the kind of like 4 to 5 inch totals of rain is that likely here, and that's the kind of stuff that will definitely obviously cause the real problems, and where you get some of those spots where some of the mountaintops get 5 or 6 inches of rain, 7 inches of rain, when the valleys get 3 or 4 or 5, and then that really causes the problem. So we'll take a closer look at this, but here's all the players on the map, right? We got a little bit of high pressure here, nosed in today. That give us the cooler evening. I was down in the low 50s this morning. Felt really nice. It would be nice if that would continue. Unfortunately, it's not going to. Here's that stalled boundary, which Debby's going to start moving kind of the whole kind of boundary a little bit north. It's also strung out and not real strong. That's actually good for us, that it's not clashing and it's not over the top of us. That's going to squeeze a lot of moisture out here, and then the interaction between this system, which is eventually going to kick Debby out, and also kind of the boundary layer moving back north, is going to create this area between the two where rain really starts to go. As you notice, though, that's to our west, which is good. And the likelihood of that kind of curving over the top of us is less likely at this point. Quite unlikely, I think, at this point. Okay, if we take a look in at the enhancement, you can start to see where that kind of axis of precipitation north of us is started. And again, this right now it's showery, but as the interaction between the two gets stronger and stronger, it will start to really kind of squeeze some of this out. And the moisture to the atmosphere to our west is has a lot more moisture, and it's a lot superior atmosphere. It's good, actually, that we have kind of had the cooler air drain in the way that we have, especially since the track of the storm would mean that we kind of need this rain in the head. Being on the east side of the storm, you tend to get a little bit less rain, and you really want the storm to have, you really would need the storm to kind of have some real rain that came ahead of the storm that would cause the real problem. So anyways, sorry, that's kind of a mouthful there, but right now, that axis looks to be to our west. That's what we want to see for us. Like I said, where it's happening, it's not so great. It's not that far to our west, so we still need to keep an eye on it. Certainly, here's like where the actual boundary layer is. And as this pivots back to the north, we just need to make sure, like tomorrow midday, that doesn't end up pivoting over the top of us and really kind of prime the pump for then those couple hours of heavy rain causing problems. That would be kind of the scenario where we get some flooding. I don't think that's real likely. Just to take a look at the upper level, here's that ridge we talked about yesterday, and you can see it has nosed its way in a little bit. This is not a strong ridge by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a weak ridge, and it is pushing Debby to the west. And you can kind of see where the weakness is between these two troughs. See, and that's what's causing Debby to move north here. It's moving into this area, basically where there's weaker airflow, where the flow kind of goes north. I mean, very, very subtle, but north, and then south again. And so what's going to it's going to continue to follow this. This is obviously all moving, but this system starts to kind of catch up and absorb Debby. So first, Debby's going to kind of move up, not to the west, but kind of get pulled almost into the system as the system approaches us, and then the whole thing slides out relatively quickly, as thankfully this storm is was moving relatively quickly. If we got the core of Debby kind of like it's going to come over us for 6 or 7 hours, I'd be concerned, but it's going to move through very quickly tomorrow evening, probably, and where we could get that 1 to 2 inches of rain an hour for a couple of hours. Probably no more than a total of 2 to 3 inches during that time, which is a lot, but not really enough to cause big widespread river issues. Certainly, it still could be tough to drive and things like that, but it's not going to be terrible. So let's take a look at kind of what the National Weather Service is saying in terms of flash flood guidance, the excessive rainfall outlook. They still have a lot of kind of the southern Vermont, except for the very, very bottom of southern Vermont in the moderate range, which still definitely puts us, they would say, in a risk area. And like I said, the reason we're still in the risk area to the west, where the moderate range, I wouldn't even be surprised to see some of this in upstate New York and things possibly go to a high risk. But the reason that the moderate risk is still there for us is that the storm, even though the track is definitely going to be west of us, and the heaviest rain is usually just to the west of the storm, and kind of near the core, is that we could get some of that rain on the front end, and then we could get, like I said, a couple of hours where you get a really heavy part of the convective activity training over the top of some spots here. That's really what we have to watch out for now. That's not super likely. I would say maybe, I would say we're in the like 5 to 10% like concern range, which means that, it's not impossible that people will see some issues, but it's not likely that people will see some issues. But it's also high enough that we should definitely be making preparations. I think if you're west of here, if you're in this area, like in central New York, up the Adirondacks, even in northwestern Vermont and northern Vermont, I would start to be kind of in, it's time to make those like whatever preparations we can ahead of time. But I think here we're still kind of in prep mode. But if you live in a very flood-prone area, if there's some things you can do to try to button some things up, shore some things up, you should still be doing that, because it's enough of a risk that better safe than sorry in that regard, even though I think we're going to be kind of on the border of okay, is my most likely forecast. I know that's a lot of word salad at you, but there you go. Storm details, just to kind of give you an idea. Flooding concerns persist, but the overall risk is much higher to our west. That's basically the same as yesterday. Not much has changed. The track has bumped around a little bit, but basically everything's locked in on this more western track. Our area looks to receive 2 to 3 inches of rain, which is plenty, with a small chance of more. Which would be problematic. If we get 3.5 to 4 inches, still probably okay. Anything more than that, and it starts to get ugly in some spots. I think we're likely to see more of that, like 2.5 to 3.5 inch range. 3.5 would kind of be the top end, unless we get some of the training cells on top of us, which could bump us up into the more problematic range. Winds, not a problem. We talked about that yesterday. There's not much wind with the system even now. There certainly won't be much wind with it tomorrow. Early preparations should still be made for those in flood vulnerable areas. And the timing of the rain, basically tomorrow afternoon, although we could see some showers anytime tomorrow, certainly in the morning, but the heavier rain, if the access gets to us, would start anytime afternoon. We're hoping for showery afternoon. If it's raining hard in the afternoon consistently, that would be when we need to really start being concerned. And then the Friday evening, we'll definitely get a band of real heavy rain as the system moves to our west. It kind of comes through almost like a front at that point as it's merged with the other system, but it will come through with kind of probably won't be any thunder or lightning with it, but it'll feel like a thunderstorm for an hour or so when it comes through and it'll rain real heavy. But again, while that's not great, as long as that's the bulk of our rain, we should be able to absorb that without too much of a problem. So that's sort of the setup. In terms of my schedule with you, I think I'll have a video probably tomorrow afternoon sometime. I'll have some text updates in between. There's some scheduling issues for me in terms of being able to get too many videos out. But I think this forecast is unlikely to change too much. We're kind of going to be into the nowcast tomorrow afternoon situation now, which is basically what do things look like as we head into into the final solution in terms of looking at radar and things like that. I don't think the forecasts are going to change enough. If they do, I'll definitely let you know. If it changes dramatically, I'll find some way to do a video. It might be on my cell phone, but I don't really have a chance to do that this evening. But if I need to, I will figure out a way to do that if it looks like it's changed dramatically. But I don't think the models are going to change much. It's now just really down to what does reality look like as compared to the models? What does radar look like tomorrow afternoon? And so we can kind of filter through those details as we go. All right. Thanks for supporting the channel. I appreciate that. Do want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. They help support what I do here. If you haven't subscribed to the channel before, I'd encourage you to do so. If you get videos like this when our weather gets interesting in the summer, or maybe not interesting, but a little scary in the summer, and certainly as we head towards winter and we get hopefully into into snow, which is also impactful, but not quite in the same way. It's kind of the fun, impactful weather that we get here in southern Vermont. Even if you don't like snow, it's a lot better than this. So anyway, thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for subscribing. I'll be back, like I said, tomorrow afternoon probably with an update on the forecast. Some of it might be cell phone kind of footage or something like that, but you'll get what you get. And it should hopefully, we're all going to hope that things don't get, that we end up on the kind of not quite so wet side of the system.